Prerequisites for collective bargaining requires a systematic preparation of the base or ground for bargaining, which involves the following three steps. Recognition of the bargaining agent. The management should give recognition to the trade union for participating in the collective bargaining process. In case there is more than one union, selection could be done through verification of membership by a government agency giving representation to all the major unions through joint consultations. Thus, the bargaining agent of the workers should be properly identified before initiating any action. Deciding the level of bargaining, because whether the dealings are confined to enterprise level, industry level, regional or national level, should be decided as the contents, scope and enforcement agencies differ in each case. Determining the scope and coverage of bargaining. It would be better to have a clear understanding of what are the issues to be covered under bargaining to prevent further friction and disputes. Therefore, all the important and interrelated issues are to be taken for consideration. So firstly, we will understand the meaning of collective bargaining. Collective bargaining is a process between employers and employees to reach an agreement regarding the rights and duties of people at work. Collective bargaining aims to reach a collective agreement which usually sets out issues such as employees' pay, working hours, training, health and safety, and rights to participate in workplace or company affairs. During the bargaining process, employees are typically represented by a trade union. The roots of collective bargaining lie in the late 19th century, when workers began to agitate for more rights in their places of employment. Many skilled trades started using their skills as bargaining tools to force their employers to meet their workplace needs. Other workers relied on sheer numbers, creating general strikes to protest poor working conditions. Several labor pioneers started to establish a collective bargaining system so that labor negotiations could run more smoothly. Features of collective bargaining are: it is a collective process. The representatives of both workers and management participate in bargaining. It is a continuous process. It establishes regular and stable relationship between the parties involved. It involves not only the negotiation of the contract, but also the administration of the contract. It is a flexible and dynamic process. The parties have to adopt a flexible attitude through the process of bargaining. It is a method of partnership of workers in management. The Indian Institute of Personnel Management suggested the following subject matter of collective bargaining: purpose of agreement, its scope and the definition of important terms, rights and responsibilities of the management and of the trade union, wages, bonus, production norms, leave, retirement benefits and the terms and conditions of service, grievance redressal procedure, methods and machinery for the settlement of possible future disputes, termination clause. After studying this lesson, you will be able to enumerate the features and importance of collective bargaining, discuss the approaches to collective bargaining, outline the procedure of collective bargaining, analyze the condition of collective bargaining in India, discuss the prerequisites in collective bargaining, underline the emerging issues in collective bargaining. Now the turn comes for discussing different approaches of collective bargaining. They are of the following types: industry bargaining, enterprise bargaining, concession bargaining, composite bargaining, conjunctive or distributive bargaining, cooperative bargaining, and productivity bargaining. Industrial bargaining is a collective bargaining that results in the signing of an industry agreement between trade unions and employees association representing employees within a particular industrial sector. In many cases, industry agreements of this kind will be supplemented by enterprise or workplace bargaining in individual firms. Enterprise bargaining is wage and working conditions being negotiated at the level of the individual organizations. Once established, they are legally binding on employers and employees. Concession bargaining originated in USA as a temporary measure to save jobs in the period of economic depression. Concession bargaining was undertaken by the employers to face increased competition and cope up with higher productivity requirements. The trade unions preferred wage cuts or wage moderation to that of job losses and displacement. Composite bargaining reflects a change in strategy from confrontation to coordination between management and labor for the promotion of their common interest of survival and progress of enterprises. It calls for a strategic shift from conventional bargaining to include issues like quality of work life, productivity improvement, enhancing of market share, or even financial matters. Collective bargaining is that where the union has to settle on the management's terms. It involves haggling over the distribution of surplus. Under it, the economic issues like wages, salaries, and bonus are discussed. In distributive bargaining, one party's gain is another party's loss. While the opposite is cooperative bargaining, here both parties are ready to forgive something and get something. And at last is productive bargaining, which is a form of collective bargaining leading to a productivity agreement in which management offers a pay raise in exchange for alterations to employee working practices designed to increase productivity. Now we can understand the difference between collective bargaining and negotiation skills. Collective bargaining is a process by which the terms and conditions of employment of workers are regulated, but negotiation is basically to resolve disputes among the parties. The process of collective bargaining also uses negotiations to reach a mutual consensus. While negotiating issues, parties shift their stand from an ideal position to a settlement point, which is mutually agreed upon. Negotiation occurs in business, non-profit organizations, and government branches, legal proceedings, among nations, and in personal situations such as marriage, divorce, parenting, and everyday life, while collective bargaining occurs only in the business world. Negotiation typically can be compared to mediation, where a disinterested third party listens to each side's arguments and attempts to help craft an agreement between the parties, but collective bargaining is a contract and discussion within two parties without any involvement of any third party. Negotiation has two approaches, namely the advocate approach and the new creative approach, while collective bargaining has 7 approaches, as we read earlier. Now let's discuss importance of collective bargaining. This can be studied under 3 heads: importance to employees, importance to employers, importance to society. Importance to employees can be stated as collective bargaining develops a sense of self-respect and responsibility among the employees. It increases the strength of the workforce, thereby increasing their bargaining capacity as a group. It helps in securing a prompt and fair settlement of grievances. It provides a flexible means for the adjustment of wages and employment conditions to economic and technological changes in the industry, as a result of which the chances for conflicts are reduced. For employers, it becomes easier for the management to resolve issues at the bargaining level, rather than taking up complaints of individual workers. It tends to promote a sense of job security among employees and thereby tends to reduce the cost of labor turnover to management. Moreover, it opens up the channel of communication between the workers and the management and increases worker participation in decision making. For society, collective bargaining leads to industrial peace in the country, which helps the pace of a nation's efforts towards economic and social development, since the obstacles to such a development can be reduced considerably. The discrimination and exploitation of workers is constantly being checked. To fully understand what is collective bargaining, we should know its procedure, which includes 5 steps. The collective bargaining process comprises of 5 core steps. Prepare. This phase involves composition of a negotiation team. The negotiation team should consist of representatives of both the parties with adequate knowledge and skills for negotiation. In this phase, both the employer's representatives and the union examine their own situation in order to develop the issue that they believe will be most important. The first thing to be done is to determine whether there is actually any reason to negotiate at all. Discuss. Here the parties decide the ground rules that will guide the negotiations. An environment of mutual trust and understanding is also created so that the collective bargaining agreement would be reached. Propose. This phase involves the initial opening statements and the possible options that exist to resolve them. In a word, this phase could be described as brainstorming. The exchange of messages takes place and opinion of both the parties are sought. Bargain. Negotiations are easy if a problem-solving attitude is adopted. This stage comprises the time when what-ifs and supposals are set forth and the drafting of agreements take place. Settlement. Once the parties are through with the bargaining process, a consensual agreement is reached upon wherein both the parties agree to a common decision regarding the problem or the issue. This stage is described as consisting of effective joint implementation of the agreement through shared visions, strategic planning, and negotiated change. Now the topic is Dunlop's contribution to industrial relations. In India, trade unions gained prominence much later, only after 1900. In 1918, Gandhiji, as the leader of the Ahmedabad textile workers, advocated the resolution of conflict through collective bargaining agreements. But the idea gathered interest only after the Second World War. In ports and docks, banking and insurance, collective agreements were arrived at right at the national level. Other than in Ahmedabad and Mumbai, so far, collective agreements have not made much headway in India. The causes for limited success of collective bargaining in India lie in the problems of trade unions and government. Due to the dominance of outsiders in trade unionism in the country, there is multiplicity of unions which are weak and unstable and do not represent majority of the employees. Moreover, there are inter-union rivalries which further hinder the process of collective bargaining between the labor and the management. Since most of the trade unions are having political affiliations, they continue to be dominated by politicians who use the unions and their members to meet their political ends. Moreover, there is a lack of definite procedure to determine which union is to be recognized to serve as a bargaining agent on behalf of the workers. Various authorities have given suggestions for better functioning of collective bargaining time from time. The Indian Institute of Personnel Management has offered the following suggestions. A progressive and strong management that is conscious of its obligations and responsibilities to the various stakeholders. A truly representative, enlightened, and strong trade union should come into being and should function on strictly constitutional lines. There should be unanimity between labor and management on the basic objectives of the organization and a mutual recognition of their rights and obligations. When there are several units of the company, there should be a delegation of authority to the local management. A fact-finding approach and a willingness to use new tools should be adopted for the solution of industrial problems. Prerequisites for collective bargaining requires a systematic preparation of the base or ground for bargaining, which involves the following 3 steps. Recognition of the bargaining agent. The management should give recognition to the trade union for participating in the collective bargaining process. In case there is more than one union, selection could be done through verification of membership by a government agency giving representation to all the major unions through joint consultations. Thus, the bargaining agent of the workers should be properly identified before initiating any action. Deciding the level of bargaining, because whether the dealings are confined to enterprise level, industry level, regional or national level, should be decided as the contents, scope and enforcement agencies differ in each case. Determining the scope and coverage of bargaining. It would be better to have a clear understanding of what are the issues to be covered under bargaining to prevent further friction and disputes. Therefore, all the important and interrelated issues are to be taken for consideration. Now let's discuss some emerging issues in collective bargaining, like first is wage bargaining, according to which wages will remain at the center stage of future contract negotiations because the size and security of income will continue to be of vital importance to workers. Second one is women's issues. A larger woman workforce may give rise to fresh challenges to both employers and unions to squarely face the particular concerns and problems of working women. Third is job security, because the potential loss of jobs due to technological change has always been a major concern for the unions. Another one is productivity, as per which the management must recognize that to obtain and increase productivity, it must seek the cooperation of the employees and the union. And the last one is quality of work life, which leads to pressure on the employer to fulfill demands of workers. Now let us check if we have understood the various concepts discussed in this lesson clearly. Collective bargaining is a process between employers and employees to reach an agreement regarding disputes. Right or wrong? Wrong. Collective bargaining is that where the union has to lose in comparison to management. Right or wrong? Right. Collective bargaining occurs at both business and non-business level. Right or wrong? Wrong. Now let's revise the whole concept. Collective bargaining is concerned with the relations between management representatives and union representatives. It involves the process of negotiation, administration, and interpretation of collective agreements covering wages, hours of work, and other conditions of employment. The labor movement must devise organizing and bargaining strategies that appeal to expanding groups across segments. Many workplaces benefit from unionization, which allows workers to speak together as a body to assert their rights. Employers also benefit from collective bargaining agreements, which set out clear expectations for both sides. Thank you.